let's start with Vegas, because Vegas has been hilarious. Like if look, we already knew the Canucks had an outside shot of making the playoffs. The Vegas Golden Knights always have like a decent shot, so it's been so funny watching them kind of just self-destruct over the last little bit. And honestly, like a little bit of Schadenfreude. Like it's like just one of those things where you're like, you kind like you're ashamed at how much you're enjoying watching them just fall apart. You're just like, finally, like you're like, oh God, this makes up for the Canucks not doing as well. Like
this is the best
in a way,
thing ever. This is
it
great.
is. It's great. I love watching. Like
everyone loves it.
Everyone loves it, and like I'm sure if there are any Vegas fans listening, they're probably like, "Why are you picking on us? Like, what have we done?" I'm like, "Oh, it's like, and you know what it is? You know what you guys have done? It's you've existed for 5 years and have somehow never known bad hockey, and that pisses me off so much that I have to like sit here and watch this garbage Canucks team for as long as I have, and you guys just cakewalk to a cup final in year 1, like." You guys wouldn't know pain if it hit you over the head. No. Yeah, I know you blew a 3-0 game against the Sharks or whatever. Yeah, you've like blown them multiple different like runs to the final, like to get back to a final again after getting like beaten by teams that clearly weren't as good. You still don't know pain. You still don't, because you've never missed the playoffs. You've never been fully, utterly, truly bad. And that's why you deserve this.
They're not even utterly, truly bad.
They're not. No, they're like, not. They're totally
really
good.
Close to making it.
They're fully on the cusp. And the only reason they're not going to make it for a lot is, in a way, their own fault. Like, it's totally their own fault. Like, it's their own making.
You could have seen it. You could see it.
You could see it coming a mile away, because it was like one of those things where it's like, as soon as the Jack Eichel deal happened, right? Like it definitely made them better. Like the Eichel deal for like, while it's not looking so good right now.
No.
I feel a little bad for Jack Eichel in this scenario where he's like, finally, I've left Buffalo. I'm going to go to a team that has perennially made the playoffs every single year. I'm finally going to get my shot at the postseason. And here he is about to miss them again. Like, oh, I feel really bad. Like, I do feel really bad for Eichel. They'll
probably do it next year.
I mean, yeah, they'll probably be fine next year. Albeit, I think they'll be fine next year with a new GM and a new coach, because, oh boy, they have shot themselves in the foot so badly.
So much drama. So much drama.
So the big thing being the Eichel thing. And Cody and I have talked about this before, like long before, right? Because you're newer to the show. Like the Eichel trade happened back in November. We talked about at the time, like, okay, the clock is ticking on you now, right? Like you have to trade somebody. That's the big problem here, is with your cap situation the way it is, you've got some injuries that are kind of giving you the space to squeeze this out. But you're going to eventually have to move somebody. Otherwise, you're not going to have any cap space. Like, you're going to be stuck, and you're not going to be able to bring back guys once they come off LTIR. Sure enough, they tried to have their cake and eat it too by trading Evgeny Dodonov without knowing that he had a no trade clause on his contract, despite literally everyone else knowing. How
do you not know that one of your players has that?
Because they're not good at their jobs. That's why. Like, they really did not, like, again, it's one of those things where it's like, in a way, like, you're like, oh, I'm sure paperwork sometimes gets lost, whatever. How can you expect to know every single contract? Exactly. It's on cap friendly. How the hell did no one in their department in the 2 years that they've had him, or like the year and a half that they've had him, go, huh, that's weird. There's a no trade clause on his cap friendly page. Someone should look at that. Like, how did they never put 2 and 2 together? Like, it's insane to me that they never saw this coming. Literally because they didn't check cap friendly, or didn't do like a back search on Twitter where you can find the Pierre LeBrun tweet that says his contract has a no trade clause in it when he signed it with Ottawa. Like, I don't know how they did that. And it's so funny because that totally screwed them. And it was another one of those things where it's like, literally, had they done that a day earlier, or like made this deal, tried to make that move earlier in the week than the last minute at 11:59 a.m., they could have fixed it. They totally could have fixed it. But nope, they decided we know exactly what's going on here, and we're gonna shoehorn this in and hope it, and this is gonna solve all our cap problems. Whoops. Nope, no, it didn't. It solved none of them, and now you're going to miss the playoffs because of that. It's just wild. It is incredible.
And he kept scoring goals for them too right after.
Yeah, like literally, especially like I applaud Dodonna for being as big a guy as he is, like being the big person in this scenario where he's like, I'm not gonna take it out on the team that clearly just tried to get rid of me. No, and I'm going to just make them like, I'm gonna do so well for them regardless. Like, good for him. Cause I know in that scenario, if it were me, like I'd kind of coast a little bit in the last little bit of season. Cause I'd be like, screw you. You tried to get rid of me. Like you tried to get rid of me and force a trade through that I didn't want. How dare you? So good for him. Like kudos to him for like continuing to do his job. It's just very funny that that's coming at the cost of like, oh, they can't reactivate Mark Stone if they wanted to, or Max Pacioretty if they wanted to. Like, or I guess Mark Stone is on the ice again, if I'm remembering correctly. Both of them are. Who did they move? Like, because they're totally in violation of the cap, are they not?
Well, like, Lehner is off.
Well, Lehner, so that's the new wrinkle. But
he was there yesterday, so
Riley Smith is on LTIR. That's what's helping right now. But even then, I think their projected cap space is 0. Like, I'm not entirely sure how they've done this. Looking at the numbers, I guess it is technically possible that they've done it, but they're using $10 million of LTIR right now. And then, the big one being Robin Lehner. So Robin Lehner, this is where I get really mad. So like beforehand, it was just like they shot management like 100%. Like, okay, before we get into Lehner, you know what? We'll tie it in. Lehner. So Robin Lehner has been injured since I believe March, or I believe he got hurt earlier in the season. He tried to play through it. He definitely missed some time, which is why Logan Thompson has played quite a few games for them here and there during the season. But then in the later points, he's tried to play through it, his injury, which he again sustained back in March as best he can. Fast forward to last week when he has a bad game, I believe I want to say the Predators. I could be wrong here. I think I might be wrong here, but nonetheless, Lehner had a bad game, had a bad night out, and Pete DeBoer, in his infinite wisdom, decided, I'm going to sewer this guy who is currently injured, who has been playing hurt for us this whole time. I'm going to publicly sewer him for playing badly. And that immediately, like, not even knowing the injury stuff, like the full extent of the injury stuff, is the Devils game. It was the game against the Devils, where he only allowed 3 goals. It's not like he was completely atrocious. Like, Pete DeBoer literally goes and is like, throws him fully under the bus for that game. And then fast forward to the Capitals game last week, Lehner gets the start again, lets in 1 goal in the first period. Then DeBoer hooks him and starts Logan Thompson in the second period after 1 goal on 12 shots. And sure enough, this weekend, the news starts breaking. I think it was Emily Kaplan of ESPN who had it first, where she said that Lehner's going to opt for season-ending surgery. And then the Knights were like, I've never heard of this. And like Pete DeBoer was like, first I've heard of it. Like, again, clearly showing that the coach had no clue that this was going to happen, and like I think he even called it like not real. Like he said there was no truth to it, and it was like, and then sure enough today, it came out that yes, he is doing it. The Knights management knew about it and asked him to sit the one last game for cap reasons on the bench against the Sharks, and it is so hilarious watching this unfold because this is entirely like, this is the Knights' fault. This is the Knights' problem in a nutshell. And this goes back to, I think, the beginning of the season, or it was either the beginning of this season or last season, where Bill Foley, the owner of the Knights, essentially said the quiet part out loud, where he basically said like, he said something along the lines of, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said something along the lines of like, the player, like what players don't win like one of those like players don't win championships teams do kind of things, where he's basically implying how expendable the players are for the Knights to win a Stanley Cup, which is a terrible way to treat your players, because they're not commodities, they're not objects, they're people. Like, and then you have Pete DeBoer doing what he does best, which is completely sour relationships with his goaltenders and with his players. Like, honestly, I've said this on the show before. Pete DeBoer might be the worst coach in the NHL for a lot of reasons. I thought it was hilarious when the Knights hired him, because I had seen what he did in San Jose and how terribly he ran that team, and how much the Sharks won games because in spite of his coaching. Like, quite honestly, especially the goaltending and the terrible way he managed his goaltenders. And this was proof of that. And the proof was in the pudding here, where he didn't give confidence to Logan Thompson for playing the games that he could. Like, he said stuff like, oh, like, you know, he's been giving us some consistency, but it's one of those things where it's like, very clearly he's showing, I will drop you at my earliest convenience. The second you start showing any sort of struggle, I'm going to drop you in favor of the next goaltender. And like, even using things like talking about like how Robin Lehner had a family emergency and using that as like reason for why he's bad. Like, he's
that was horrible.
That pissed me right off. Like, that should not. Yes, easily. Like, that pissed me off to my very core of like, you shouldn't even bring it up. Like, it shouldn't have even been brought up that there was a family emergency in that case. It is irrelevant to his goaltending.
Yeah.
Whether or not it impacts his goaltending on the ice, like in his personal like well-being, it has zero relevance to what he's doing on the ice, and as it should. And it's trash. It's absolute garbage that DeBoer would use that as like a reason for why he's been bad and why he's not consistent in his inconsistency. And it's like atrocious. And I'm stunned that he has a job in the NHL right now, because he doesn't deserve it. He's a terrible coach.
Yeah. Because I remember in the bubble with like the whole like with the drama with Fleury and like all that, it was like favoring Lehner over Flower or something, and then like Lehner was so happy to be a Golden Knight because of like he felt like he belonged somewhere now, because he moved around a lot when he was playing, I guess, a backup role. He was playing a backup role.
Well, he was playing in Chicago, I think behind Corey Crawford in his last season, but it was kind of like a split duty thing. But like, either way, he was getting an opportunity with like a winning organization at the time. Yeah.
And he felt like he finally had a home where he could stay. And now it doesn't seem like he really likes it anymore, which I feel really bad about.
Yeah. And that happened. And you mentioned Fleury. Fleury's a great example of that, where the Knights treated a guy who had taken them to a Stanley Cup final like expendable garbage the second it became convenient for them to kick him to the curb. And then he had to find out he got traded to Chicago on Twitter. They didn't even tell him ahead of time, which is an abysmal way to treat your players, because they deserve better than that, especially a guy who has given you everything he can and won a fucking Vezina trophy the season before.
Yeah, literally.
Won a fucking Vezina.
Like, you had Marc-Andre Fleury and you still treat him like that? Like, that's ridiculous.
Atrocious. Marc-Andre Fleury, like, by all accounts, one of the nicest people in the NHL. Like, unreal that you broke him in that way. Like some of the things, like he considered retiring, which is like, again, awful that you treated him this way. And like, going back to like what you talked about that time in the bubble and everything, I remember that being another key piece of like, good Lord, Pete DeBoer cannot manage goaltenders for shit, where he essentially, where not only was he was doing the exact same thing, where he was not giving Lehner any confidence in his ability to start games regularly, while also throwing Fleury under the bus and then making them compete against each other for essentially pitting them against one another for no reason. Like, gold 1A 1B tandems can work in the NHL provided you have a coach who understands how to get the best out of both and understands how to instill confidence in both goaltenders at the same time, while not making it a situation of like, I'm starting this guy because I don't like you kind of thing, or like because you're not doing well enough. Like, it's got to be a case of you got to find that healthy medium. Pete DeBoer always kind of manages to make it like poisonous to the point where then you have things like in the next series later where they're losing games to Dallas and he's still like actively using Thatcher Demko as an excuse for why they're losing games. And it's like one of those things where it's like, if you're making excuses, if a guy who you have not played now in like 4 games is still the reason you're losing games, then you're a crappy coach. Then you're a shitty coach who's not doing his job and doesn't know how to motivate his players. Like, I don't know what else to say. Like, the fact that he has a job here is abysmal, and I will judge the Knights if they don't fire him at the end of the year. Like, he should have a one-way ticket out of there in Vegas, and their front office too, for the way they bungled their cap problems. They have no depth now. What do? Like, they wrecked their own chances at the postseason.
They got rid of like everyone that they that they drafted. Like, all high caliber people that they had are gone.
They have nothing left. There's nothing left there, and what do you have to show for it? Like, yeah, you had a good run of 5 years, but like, good Lord, what are you going to do now? You're not a playoff team suddenly, and you don't have a lot left. You have a good, decent core group now when healthy, but even then, you're going to have to get rid of some of those guys because you bungled your cap situation so badly. Some of those guys are going to have to get traded, and it's like, what are teams going to? Teams are not going to go easy on them over it, considering how much the Knights benefited from the expansion draft and everything. And I mean, at the time we all thought they didn't, but now in hindsight, clearly they benefited very well, which is fine. Like, that's, in a way, that is how it should be in the expansion draft system. Like, the team, like, if you want to grow a market, they shouldn't be awful in the first year. And the Kraken could have been a very good team too this year had they not done a bad job drafting.
I have no idea.
Yeah, no one. That was a terrible expansion draft.
There's so many people.
There were so many better players they left on the table for no reason. I don't understand it, especially in the goaltending department. I do not understand why they went the direction they did.
And then they signed Grubauer and traded back the Caps goalie they took.
And traded back, Vitek Vanacek, who's a very good young goaltender.
Great.
They could have had him, and they could have had Capo Kakkonen, who went to the Sharks later for like a 3rd round pick, something extremely small price to pay for a decent backup goaltender, and a guy who could be a long-term starter down the road. Like, stunning how little the Sharks paid to get him. And here are the Knights, like a team that has decimated all their depth. Teams are not going in the off season, are not going to be like, sure, we'll take this bad. Like, they're not going to be like, sure, we'll take 34-year-old Alec Martinez off his like contract, off his like 3 year, off the 2 years he has left. We'll take Alex Pietrangelo, who's still a very good defenseman, but like, for the amount of time he's got left on at 32, that's a lot of time and space. Like, they're not going to go easy on you. They're going to be like, okay, you want to keep Jack Eichel? Sure. Give us Mark Stone or give us Max Pacioretty. Like, they're not going to go easy on you. No. Every team in the NHL is going to circle them like wolves, just licking their chops at like, good Lord, they're going to get something good. You have to give us something good. You can't afford not to. You have no cap space. So it's going to be a very interesting offseason for Vegas. And it's going to be all the funnier when they completely miss the playoffs in a couple days. Like, I think, how quickly do you think the fireworks would start if they missed the postseason here?
Once I guess right after the Stars game.
Like, the next day, you think they'll fire everybody?
No, right after.
Literally the hour, like, oh my God, like Kelly, like, instead of the coaches coming out to address the media, it's just like the owner just being like, yeah, I've fired literally everyone.
Yeah, then I feel bad about the people that are gonna go in for them. Like, what are they gonna do?
Yeah,
what can they do?
I mean, the Canucks are a good example of like, hey, what do you do if your cap space is in a bad spot. But like, hey, the Canucks at least have youth on their side. They at least have draft picks on their side. They've got Jim Benning left a mess. He didn't he's not going to leave the same kind of mess that the Golden Knights are going to be in. The next GM of the Golden Knights is going to be in when he gets to the team. The coach will have still a decent time, but but the GM is going to be like, God, what do I do? Like,
they're going to be like, why did you do this to me?
I mean, you have no choice but to go for it again, to keep going for it, because there's only way where to go is keep digging, because they've got no assets in the youthful assets left. Like, I mean, I guess Nolan Patrick technically, but that guy's been dealing with injury issues galore.
Many issues. He has so
many I really feel bad for Nolan Patrick. Like, he was a guy that, like, God, like, it's been a rough go for him. I would love nothing more than to see that guy have some success.